All right, so let's begin here. Thank you for joining us here. Our topic today is called the seamless sales handoff. And our goal today is to teach you how to use ConnectWise PSA and CPQ to deliver a seamless sales handoff to your customers. It's that key part of the customer journey where you deliver and set your teams up to deliver what was promised by your sales team. And before that service is scheduled and delivered to your customers. So that sales handoff is such an important part, and we want to show you how to use PSA and CPQ to achieve success. As with all things ConnectWise and live, we want to hear from you. So don't be shy, give it a try. Use that Q&A pod to reach out with any questions you have. And we also have discussion prompts throughout this webinar. So just enter your questions in the chat. We'll answer you throughout. All right. And without further ado, let's have our speaker introduction. I'm Jennifer Ugochukwu. I'm a software training consultant here at ConnectWise. I'm based in Austin, Texas. So howdy, y'all. And I'm a business management solution subject matter expert. And my favorite sales handoff feature is the sales order. So I'm going to emphasize why it's so important to use the sales order and those sales order statuses to set that internal process for your team so you deliver a smooth, and consistent sales handoff experiences to all of your customers and every time.
Hey all, my name is Klein Long. I'm a software training consultant here, also a business management specialist for PSA and CPQ. I am located in Tampa, Florida, and my favorite feature, of course, is product sourcing and the opportunity quoting process in general. Definitely go ahead and use our question and answers chat to get at us live through this presentation as we go over creating detailed quotes. We want to start off your quote process right by creating an opportunity and then showing how we can push this to CPQ. We want to convert the opportunity that has all of our products on it to a sales order. And we want to see how that becomes kind of the launching pad, the jumping off point for all of the things on our service, our sales service handoff in PSA. Jennifer's going to go over how to use sales orders and the different ways they can branch out for your business and different scenarios where they might be useful. And of course, I'm going to go over the standardization of the customer onboarding process at the end. Once we have a good idea of what our sales service handoff is, I'd like to touch on just a few things that can help automate that process and make it a little bit easier for us. Obviously, we have the question and answers chat. I do appreciate hearing from all of you and bearing with us while we had our tech difficulties. So feel free to ask us any questions you want during our presentation. If we don't have a chance to get to them, I will make sure that we touch on those at the end where we have some time quarantined off for you.
All right. Thank you for setting us up there, Klein. So we have this webinar to tell the story of the sales handoff webinar as we go. So there's a new opportunity that your sales team has won with a new customer. And this opportunity is a full stack professional security installation. So that includes hardware, services, and recurring services. Then we're going to go through the sales handoff. So once that opportunity is won, what happens next? And that's where we launch those internal processes like procurement, like setting up meetings with our customers so they know how to communicate and contact with us, which is a part of customer onboarding. And customer onboarding is so important in that sales handoff because it's important that your customers know how to communicate with you, like through that PSA end user portal. And it's important that your team knows who to communicate with them for scheduling services and billing and communicating information about the agreement. So you're going to see this chevron throughout the presentation just so you can keep track of where we are along that sales handoff. So again, just like Klein said, we're going to go over the opportunity. When it comes to sales in PSA, it all starts from the opportunity. So creating that opportunity, quoting effectively, then converting the opportunity to a sales order. Once that opportunity is won, utilizing that sales order to track the sales handoff process, and then onboarding your customer throughout that sales handoff experience.
Okay, here we are, creating detailed quotes. What is it all about? Where do we start? You might think we start in CPQ with a quote. In fact, we start in PSA with an opportunity. So I did want to go ahead and show you all. We do have at our university something called our 5-step quoting process. Essential. Great process. please scan the QR code that we have right there for a little bit more detailed information on this. Maybe keep that bookmarked and kind of refer back to that after this presentation, because you'll have a lot better understanding of the process in general and the specific goals of this handoff. I want to condense this down to really 3 points, right? Make it a little bit more of a 3-step process. I want to go over create a quote from a template. I want to go over that middle step, add products and services. And then the most important step, right, the crucial one, is updating the opportunity. The process of quoting can have a lot of information coming from different places. So, to take a quick look at that, you want to stick with gathering information and calculating costs so you can determine some kind of a price strategy for the quote. You want to consider different factors, right, such as market conditions, competition, profit margins, your customers' expectations. And then once you've reviewed your quote, then it can be sent to the customer and you can update your opportunity. So I have a bit of a business case for us. Let's help Jasper with his sales handoff. Jasper is the sales manager for his company, and he wants to ensure a seamless sales handoff. So to begin, he's got to prepare a quote for his customer, right? He knows that he has to utilize the features of both CPQ and PSA in order to set his team up for success with his clients, right? Ideally, he's going to utilize all the tools that he has on hand. He creates an opportunity in PSA, which is going to serve as the launch pad for all of the work related to the quote that he plans to build out. All of that future work, whether it's a sale, whether it's an agreement, whether it's just a service ticket for various, tech jobs, like maybe an installation. See that chevron again. We are, just to remind you, in the opportunity and quote stage of this, the first stage. I wanted to pitch this over to you guys. I have a quick question here. What slows down your sales team when creating a new quote? I've heard all kinds of answers to this as well, so you can feel free to hit me with your most absurd. Let me see it in the Q&A here. What are the things that slow down your team? What are some things that some issues that you run into? It's good. Okay. You guys go ahead and don't be shy. Feel free to hit us in the chat. I am going to move on, but if you think of any, please pitch it to us. So let's say I, Klein, have a sale I've been working on. To start, I absolutely always create an opportunity first. Why, you might be asking? Well, I can set myself and my team up for success by adding information here that will follow the opportunity as it lives and goes through conversions in PSA. And this is including, the quote conversion to CPQ and then back to PSA. Information like the point of contact, the shipping site, the actual shipping contact, who you're going to be dealing with. A lot of times, especially at bigger companies, these are not the same people, right? Some smaller shops might have one person that, for better or for worse, has to handle it all. But you want to know exactly who you're talking to and where your products are going. Obviously, we can select the company information here. We can select our shipping information. Another good one that I wanted to point out was you have the ability to create sales activities as well to kind of monitor the team's engagements with customers throughout the sales process. Definitely something that I really enjoy looking at. When you're on an opportunity, we move over. There's a little forecast pod. Looks a little something like this. The opportunity forecast pod plays a pretty cool role in this beginning stage of the sales service handoff. It's really designed to help the sales team plan their future sales performance, kind of based on cost, historical data, current trends. Since we add products to the quote in CPQ and then we update the opportunity after, we want to make sure that on the opportunity itself, there's a products tab and that has 0 in it. We're just adding estimates right now, ideally in this part of the process. At a glance, you can see we have these green check marks right here. That'll just show you that you can tell that you have estimates input into the forecast. This is a great tool to aid when you're making decisions, by providing insight on the projected cost and margin. This will help us with weekly sales reviews, tracking quotas, and we really want to put an emphasis here on adding estimates as opposed to adding products, right? We don't want to junk up our product catalog. When you actually source products from Eatalize or a punch-out site in CPQ, which we'll go over here shortly, it'll add the product to your PSA catalog. So don't do more work right now than you have to. Let's keep this as an estimate, and let's get a good idea of what it is that we're going to be pitching to our customer. So the quote is created in CPQ from the PSA opportunity, and that is done just by using this little quote button right here on the opportunity itself. When you click this, it'll prompt you with a new quote template or prompt you to pick a quote template for your new quote. So like I mentioned before, we set the opportunity first with information that'll follow us throughout PSA and indeed throughout this entire process. The company and the contact of the opportunity are selected automatically on the quote, and you're prompted to bring over any products listed on the opportunity. But again, we're only establishing this with estimates right now. We're going to bring the products over from CPQ. Creating the quote from an opportunity establishes a link between the two. So any future opportunity updates made from the quote, those are going to update the original opportunity, right? You may have been asking, and remember, I posed the question earlier, why do we create the opportunity first? Well, that kind of is the launching off pad for reasons like this. So now that the quote exists in CPQ, we can get started with product sourcing and build it out. So we go to this prepare content tab, or this prepare content screen rather, is where we add our line items to our quote. And depending on the product class of that line item, you'll want to use different product sourcing options in CPQ. If you recall, PSA product catalog, those products have classes, and that determines how the product behaves in PSA. And once we go over converting products to the other line items off a sales order, you'll see that they do in fact behave differently in PSA. So that's something that Jennifer is going to be showing us in just a moment here. So to simplify and streamline this quoting process, which again is the whole point of the sales service handoff, it's best that your quote templates have tabs that coincide with the product classes that you have in PSA, right? Service class products will go into the service tab here. We have a hardware tab. We have our recurring services. This is before you go into your product search information. The product search is great for sourcing items that already exist in your CRM, like maybe service class products or bundle class products. Or if you have hardware that already exists in your inventory, if you've already bought it, let's say you sourced it from Eatalize or from a punch-out site, you can use this as it's in your inventory already. If you need to source new products, though, that's where the Eatalize search and punch-out sites really come in handy. Or maybe you bought them before, but you need to order more. Using Eatalize or punch-out sites will bring you right to those e-commerce sites like Amazon or Dell, and it'll let you source products directly from there onto your quote. So we move on into this publish and deliver tab once we're ready, once we've set all of our hardware, software, all of our products are on the quote. And we're going to go ahead and click this publish icon right here. You'll see it in the deliver options underneath. I have an order porter selected. That's going to bring us to a link. And this is essentially just a web URL that both you and your clients can go to review the proposal for what it is that you're quoting them. It gives you kind of, obviously it says it's not approved there, but before you go ahead and send it, it'll show you your proposal as a PDF. It'll show you it from the actual web URL interface that your customers will be seeing. You'll see we have the option to review and select options. When you expand on the tab, it will give you an itemized list of everything that's showing on this proposal for your partners, for your customers to see. So now we'll go back to the quote that has all of our fancy products added now, and we can update the opportunity in PSA. In the Win tab, you actually have it's very easy to spot. You have the update opportunity, and this brings up fields that you can adjust before passing the information over to the PSA opportunity. It's really just another stop for you to make sure and check that everything is set correctly. You definitely want to take a look at a couple of things here as well. So now you can send revised quotes to your customer and convert the opportunity to a sales order to really dive into the handoff from your sales team to your technicians. But here we want to take a look at something, the opportunity grouping type. We want to group by line item. That way we can get products added, but we can also show our products on our actual quote, and we can, show an accurate display of what it is that we're handing off here. 2 is going to be the manage type. You really want to map what the tab name is going to be for the product type, the product class in manage, right? So we have our hardware is set as a product, services are services, recurring services, and PSA, that would be an agreement class products. We move on. We have another pod. We have our create new items pod. This is really just going to show you what you just sourced from your vendor. So like Eatalize or one of our punch out sites, maybe you ordered something from Amazon, and that's what's going to be created in PSA if it doesn't already exist. And then 4 is we're going to have our manage items. Shows what's already in PSA, right? Then you have to click save so everything goes into the system. Why are we organizing all of this? Well, as a sales manager, you want to have this broken down as much as possible, and you also want to see where the quote is in the quoting life cycle. So I can look at an overview of this with a success list, something called the sales report, which pulls information from our success list. So we have what's called success list profiles in CPQ. They're really just a visual aid. They kind of help you instantly visualize the progress of your active quotes. And they do this by displaying stages. These can be set up in the, you see right here, I have the system the system section open. There's a sales coaching and then success list profiles. Each stage is going to be color coded to indicate work on any of your quotes, whether it's past due or if it needs attention. And then these stages are designed to keep you up to date with your quotes. It can alert you to your quotes that need follow-up actions. They can enable you to process a large amount of quotes efficiently. So how do we access this? I just wanted to make a note. We can access this by going to the settings screen in CPQ. You'll navigate to settings, reporting, and then the success report is where you can actually access the report itself. So the report itself kind of provides a summary. It's another visual aid, a quick look kind of thing. Provides a summary on key metrics that your sales team might need to make better decisions, make more informed decisions on their quotes and their proposal process. You have different colors assigned to specific elements within the report. For example, you see here, green might be used to indicate like successful outcomes or achievements or just one delivered quotes. We might have yellow for areas that require attention and red for critical issues. You can do this in CPQ, but you do have to go ahead and click into the settings screen for this to be broken down granularly. So if you don't need for things to be broken down this granularly and you don't really need to check your success report every single day, there's a way you can automate this. We have workflow rules. One of my very secret favorite things. I was hesitant. I almost put workflow rules as my favorite feature here as part of the process because you want to talk about making it automated and seamless. This is really something that does a lot of the work for you in the background and can even start sending you emails. So the more you commit to ConnectWise CPQ and PSA for your quoting and sales process, right, the more you really allow yourself to set these things up and just give yourself over to the ConnectWise way, the more options you'll have that are open to you. Automating the quote or the opportunity monitoring process is going to save a lot of time and headache. And it's actually going to save a lot of user error too as well. I find a lot of people have told me, especially from my old support days, when you turn them on to little things in this process, little workflow rules they can create, they were finding that work was getting done that they kept forgetting to do in terms of like creating sales activities, staying on top of their staff to send an email and remind them to reach out to a customer. A workflow rule can be set up to catch any opportunities that might be close to expiring in PSA. That was a really good one that we always tried to pass on where we could. Here we have a rule set up to run when the quoting expiration date has been reached, and it'll send an email to the resources assigned and they can follow up accordingly. You always want to add, you always want to have a little test, right? So we always recommend using our test button before the workflow is active. And this is just a basic one. Both Jennifer and myself will go over a couple of additional workflow rules you can have set up. And with that, I do want to pass it over to my dear friend, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Klein. You did an excellent job of showing how to effectively generate those quotes and update the opportunity after a quote is won. All right. So I see so many questions in the chat and I really appreciate it. Hopefully I answered all of them, but if we don't get to it during the presentation, we can of course answer all of these in the Q&A session at the end. So just like Klein showed us, once that opportunity is won, we update the opportunity in CPQ, and now it's the important step of converting that opportunity to the sales order in PSA. Now, before we dive into this, I hear this often from partners, like, why do I even use a sales order? What's the point? It's extra clicks. Well, here's why it's important. First, it's a centralized form of communication. Creating that sales order lets your sales team know and your service team know that we're done with that sales process. The opportunity is closed. It's historic information. And we want all that communication centralized onto the sales order so we can begin those internal processes. So we know that it's time to onboard our customer and initiate that sales handoff. Not only that, but information is linked from the opportunity to the sales order. So first, those are those notes that your sales team took about that opportunity, like who to contact, how we should set up service with this customer. Notes and attachments as well are transferred over to that sales order. So if there is some documentation such as the community map or information about where that service will be delivered, all of that is carried over from the opportunity to the sales order. And moreover, all of those products that client showed us in the products tab of the opportunity also get linked over to the sales order and throughout the subsequent items that are converted from the sales order, like the project or the service tickets and agreements. And that's huge because from the opportunity, you can see what products have been billed, and all of this is carried over throughout that product's life cycle in PSA. So all of that communication and all of that information is linked when you convert it from the opportunity to the sales order. And something that's huge about sales orders is that they launch those internal processes. In PSA, adding products to a sales order generates purchasing demand. So client walked us through product sourcing, but once you generate that sales order, you can actually begin procurement with your customers, with your vendors, and create that purchase order. You cannot generate purchasing demand for products on the opportunity. Another key thing about sales orders is that you can also invoice from the sales order. So you can't generate purchasing demand or invoices from the opportunity. And the reason why it's so important to generate purchasing demand and invoices in that sales order, in that sales handoff, is because, for example, you need to procure those items and collect payment from your customer before you actually start to schedule services. You don't want to jump ahead of yourself and actually schedule services to deliver in our business case, which would be security, hardware, equipment, and recurring services. You don't actually want to schedule that in your project before you've actually procured those items from your vendor and actually received payment from your customer. So again, sales orders represent that key part of the customer journey where you can begin that transition and that handoff and purchase those items from your vendors. So I always recommend convert the opportunity to a sales order. So again, this is where we are in this sales handoff process. We're going to convert the opportunity to a sales order and then use that sales order to track all of those steps that we follow in our organization to create that seamless and efficient sales handoff. But I want to ask you, please use that Q&A chat like you've been doing throughout this presentation. What challenges do you face when converting the opportunity to the next step, to that sales order? Okay, so I saw a question in the chat and I'll answer it now. So what if our sales order requires a client deposit before the sales order is processed? Absolutely. I'm actually going to show where you can use in the sales order finance tab some checkboxes that require, for example, that a down payment invoice is utilized in that sales order before you move it to the next step. You can also set up in your internal teams using the sales order statuses that you have a process where there's a deposit required in your sales order status. You can use email notifications to notify your team that we need a deposit or a payment before we close out this sales order or move this sales order to the next step. So if you do end up taking that down payment from your customer, you can restrict that down payment to the subsequent items that the sales order gets converted to. So I would highly recommend using sales order statuses to track that internal process. So if the deposit is needed, if payment is needed, definitely set that up in your system setup tables, which we'll go over in just a moment. Okay, so I see more coming from the chat. So sometimes products do not come over. Okay, so I'm going to go over just now how we can convert those products over to the sales order. All right. So we're back in that opportunity. And just like Klein mentioned, once you update the opportunity details in CPQ, save that information, all of it is actually converted to real products in PSA and appears in that opportunity products tab. But something else I want to point out here is that in the opportunity, we also have notes and attachments. So in our business case, our sales team took notes about that full stack security installation, who to contact to schedule services, and how the customer wants to have them scheduled. So if they preferred work performed in the morning, evenings, or on weekends. Our sales team already took that information. Let's store it in the notes and carry it over to the sales order and to the project so our team knows. Also, we have attachments such as the community map. So when this attachment gets converted from the sales order to the project, our teams always know where this equipment will be installed. Maybe if it's a large campus, a university, we know exactly what buildings these items need to be set to. All right, so moving on, let's take a closer look at those products. So Klein talked about those different product classes in PSA. So here we have our hardware that we source from our vendors. It includes inventory and non-inventory class products. That's our monitoring system. That's our camera equipment and our camera mounting equipment. Then we have our bundle class products. So bundle class products in PSA are very useful to track those services, because we'll see in just a moment when they get converted eventually onto a project. They will represent the project phase and project tickets in the project work plan. And then lastly here, we have our agreement class product. And agreement class products are used in our agreements to easily bill for recurring services. So from the opportunity, all of these products will be converted to the sales order. And then I will show you how we can convert from the sales order those hardware products onto the project, and then eventually convert them to configuration so we can know exactly the serial number and manufacturer information for that hardware. That bundle class product will be converted from the sales order onto the project, where it will become the project phase and project tickets in the project work plan. And lastly, from the sales order, we'll convert that agreement class product to our agreement, and where it will appear as an addition on the agreement. So you can easily bill for those recurring services. Okay, and I want to point out some workflow rules that you can use to monitor the sales handoff. So we talked about why converting the opportunity to the sales order is so important. But let's say someone forgets. Someone has gone on vacation, and we don't realize that an opportunity is waiting to move on to that next step so we can generate purchasing demand and create an invoice to bill our customers. So I highly recommend use this workflow rule that represents opportunities and checks for opportunities that are won and closed and have unconverted products, because that represents a stall in the sales handoff. It represents a delay. We don't want to set our customers up for disappointment and maybe thinking that we're not ready to efficiently hand them off to service. So use this opportunity, use this workflow rule to check for those opportunities, and you can send an email, send a push notification, or create an activity for your team so they know to do the next step to convert that opportunity and all of its products and attachments to the sales order. Okay, then I also have this workflow rule that now represents sales orders. So once we are on the sales order, we know we need to convert it to the project or to the agreement like I just showed. So here, this workflow rule checks for unconverted products on the sales order where those products have already been shipped. So we know that if we've shipped those items to our customer, but we haven't actually converted the sales order to a project, perhaps there's a delay in scheduling services to be delivered. So in our business case, it could create a delay in actually installing that hardware for our customer and beginning billing for that customer in our agreement. So I want to be sure there's no delay. So use this workflow rule, check for those sales orders, and send a push notification, in this example, to our team so they know to do the next step. And of course, with all workflow rules in PSA, please test them so that you know that they are being triggered by the appropriate record that you anticipate. All right, so let's continue on. Let's actually convert this opportunity to the sales order. I saw in the chat some people saying, well, sometimes all the things aren't getting converted over to that sales order. So pay close attention now. I'm going to show you how to do that. So when you're in the opportunity tab of that opportunity, in that toolbar, click the convert button. Then you'll see a series of menu items that pop up here. And we'll see our conversion option. The first one is the sales order. So convert into the sales order and click next. We're going to create a new sales order. And then here we can see we have the option to attach all of those notes. And we know those notes are important. Our sales team took the time to let us know what day and time and who to contact to schedule services. We're going to copy those notes over. And we'll also copy that attachment which is, in our case, the community map, over to the sales order. Then here we can see all of the products available to us to attach to that sales order. This includes all of the various product classes. So the inventory, non-inventory, bundle class product, and the agreement class product. Be sure that all of them were selected, and they are selected by default. Be sure to copy every single product over to the sales order to keep that information trackable throughout its PSA lifecycle. Okay. So then once we click next, we finish, we can see that our sales order has been created. And in the next section, I'll go over how to actually use this sales order to track your sales handoff process. But first, I have to address this. I hear it often from partners. They're like, well, what are cases where I won't use a sales order? I'll address these now. So for example, you might have an opportunity that only includes services. So you don't need to procure items from a vendor. You just have, for example, maybe it's virtual remote consulting with your customer, and your opportunity is used to track that sales funnel. And then you just convert it directly from the opportunity to a service ticket or to agreement if that opportunity only had agreement class products. Then another example where you wouldn't convert the opportunity to a sales order could be that the opportunity represents a change order. So let's say initially you had a deal with a customer that went from the opportunity to the sales order and then to the project. But through the project, your customer requests more services. Maybe they have additional hardware or workstations they want you to monitor. So again, you utilize that opportunity and always use the opportunity to track estimates in sales for forecasting and sales funnel management purposes. Then convert from the opportunity directly to an existing project. So maybe you just want to skip a step in that case because you've already gone through it. And this example, an opportunity only represents a change order requesting additional services. And lastly, I often hear partners say, well, I don't have a sales handoff. We're a small business. It's only one person. It's the business owner or a team of 3 people managing the sales handoff. We don't actually have a sales handoff. And so that's why we're not using sales orders. And look, I get it, but I assure you, you do have a sales handoff. You do have a sales process that you transition your customers through each and every time before services are scheduled and delivered. So it's important to use that sales order to set those different statuses and set those different stages of your sales handoff process. Why? Because we want our customers to have a consistent experience each and every time. We want to make sure we're delivering on the promise that our sales team made to our customers. So whether you're a one-person show, you wear many hats, or you're a small team that plans to scale, use that sales order to set your internal teams up for success as well as your customers up for success during that sales handoff. All right, so now let's go over actually using sales orders to set and track that sales handoff process. So in our customer journey, we're in that stage where we're going to use that sales order to actually track the sales handoff. This is the meat and potatoes, the main course of the sales handoff experience. This starts in the system setup table. So if you navigate to the system module, select setup tables, and search for the sales order status setup table, you'll see the various statuses that make up the sales orders. And I suggest using this setup table to actually delineate clearly what are those steps you want your internal team to do each time you have an opportunity won from a new customer. So in this example, we have different statuses such as new, waiting on deposit, where we need to wait before we actually get a payment from our customer before we move on to the next steps. And we have management approval and approved in case your team scales and you need to make sure that this sales order is ready for the next step, which would be ordering those items from your vendor. We have in progress where things are flowing through the sales handoff. We might set up those onboarding meetings with our customer. And then, of course, we have statuses for when an item is back ordered. So maybe you have an item back ordered from your vendor. And this is, again, why I highly recommend using sales orders, even if you're a one-person team who does the sales handoff, because you're managing multiple opportunities. Some opportunities will be in the sales order stage, in the sales handoff stage, and your vendor has a back order. You don't want to forget about these opportunities in these sales orders. You want to make sure that you're flowing that process to the next step. So we're going to look at in just a moment how we can do this with the statuses, but I also want to point out that you can see here in this setup table that sales order statuses have default settings that you can apply, such as new. And then also we have the closed setting you can apply. So for example, we don't want to close our sales order until the project or ticket is created, because you don't want a sales order to be complete, but you actually forget to schedule those services with your customer. So think about that workflow rule I just showed, where there are unconverted products on that sales order, but we haven't converted it. So we haven't converted it to the project. So think about using these sales order statuses to track that process. All right, so let's drill into the waiting on deposit sales order status, because I'm going to show you how to actually create an invoice from a sales order. So if you either click the new item icon or just click into an existing status, you'll see this screen here where you can set the sales order status name and set the order so that you can clearly delineate for your team which process must be done in the exact sequential order. And then we have those checkboxes there where you can set the default or closed status to those sales orders. And then here's the key part about sales order statuses. We can create email templates so that we can notify the appropriate person on our team when the next step needs to be performed in that sales order so that we can efficiently and seamlessly complete the sales handoff. So you can see here we have our email templates set up and tokens that we can then use to add to the sales order so that when our team gets this email, they know the order number, the company name, and key information about that sales order, such as the sales order date and due date. And this is really important to keep track of, as we'll see in just a moment, what these fields actually mean and how we can use them. But I highly recommend setting up these statuses in email notifications so that no matter who is working on sales handoff and no matter how many people are in the sales handoff, they'll always know what to do next. They'll never drop the ball with the customer. You'll always have cash flow coming in when you know you're waiting on a deposit. You'll read those invoices in a timely manner, and you'll schedule those services in a timely manner with your customers. So let's actually use this sales order. So we're back in the sales order. We're in the order tab of the sales order. And I want to point out some of the other tabs. So again, we can see those products and attachments were carried over from the opportunity to the sales order. You can also see that once we eventually create invoices and do conversions from the sales orders, we can see that tab information there, and I'll also go over the finance tab in just a moment. So we also have key company information in the sales order. Now, this is really important because this came over from the opportunity. So if you notice there's a mistake, or you might often have situations where the primary company is not where services are being performed. It's not where you need to ship those products. So just be sure to check this information, make sure it's accurate before you actually start procurement off this sales order. Because now that those products are on the sales order, we've generated purchasing demand. You don't want those items being sent to the wrong location and stalling service delivery for your customers. Then you also have the sales order and internal notes pod. Now, there we have that status, that important sales order status that you're going to have your teams utilize as your sales order goes through those various steps and stages. Then we also can see the opportunity that this sales order came from. So think back to our reasons why we use a sales order. We want to link information. You can click that opportunity field name and even return back to that opportunity in case there's more information you wanted to gather. But of course, you saw that we copied over those attachments and notes. Also, in the sales order pod, we have the order date, which is set automatically the day that the sales order is created. And then we have our sales order due date, in which you could set manually for your teams. So in our business case, we've set our due date to 2 weeks after the sales order is created because we want to make sure that we're quickly going through that sales handoff process, that we're not spending too much time procuring the products from our vendors and actually collecting payment from our customers. We want to be sure that at least 2 weeks after that sales order is created, we've closed it and we're moving on to scheduling service delivery for our customer. There's also other key information about the sales order in this pod, like the location, department, and the sales rep who was originally involved with this sale, in case you need to go back and get additional information. And of course, we have sales tax and the total for this sales order. Moving on, there are also internal notes. So those notes that, again, we saw were copied over from the opportunity are here in the internal notes pod. So we know exactly who to contact to schedule service delivery. So in our business case, for that full stack security system installation, we know to contact a specific person who typically wants work performed at a specific day and time. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the finance tab of the sales order. Here we have the billing information pod. So we're going to look in just a moment how to create an invoice. I just want to point out this information comes by default from the company finance screen. But if, for example, you want to change it manually on the sales order, for example, you want the invoice billing terms to be due upon receipt, you can change that manually here in this pod. Moving on, we also have the invoicing options and invoice description, which you can use to set some factors on how this sales order will be used. For example, if you want to bill the sales order only after it's been closed or bill products only after they ship, you can set those restrictions in the invoicing options pod. And then you can also restrict the down payment. Like if you create a down payment invoice from the sales order, you can restrict it to the subsequent items that are created from the sales order, the subsequent project. In this case, we're going to create a standard invoice, but I'll show you how that because we have linked the products over from the opportunity to the sales order and then to the project, we won't accidentally bill again for anything we bill for in this sales order. All right, so now let's go ahead and create an invoice from the sales order. Back in that order tab, just go ahead and click the Create Invoice button in the toolbar. And we'll see a menu pop up giving us options on what we want to invoice. In this example, we're going to invoice for that camera equipment hardware from our customer, and I'll include notes on the invoice as well, those notes that we entered for the invoice in the Finance tab. So here, once we click OK and go through that menu option, we can see the invoice has been created. It is a standard invoice in this example. We can see those billing terms, billing due date information, which was from that Finance tab, including those invoice notes that were on the Finance tab as well. And then moving on lower down in that invoice, we can see the products we've billed for, which in this case is that hardware. So let's go ahead and convert this sales order to a project. So we're back in the sales order on the Order tab. In that toolbar, click the Convert button this time to convert this sales order to a project. Now that we've already taken payment, it's time to actually schedule out services for the sales order. Again, we'll see options similar to when we converted from the opportunity to the sales order, but now we're converting from the sales order to the project. So I'll click Project in my first option in the conversion options and click Next to continue. And in this case, I'm creating a new project. I want to copy all of those notes that were originally on the opportunity, now on the sales order, now to the project. Then I will also copy those attachments like our community map so we know where to install this hardware. And lastly, this is really important here. We have products that we are going to transfer over to that project. Notice here, you don't see that agreement class product. And that's really important here because that will actually go on the agreement. So it doesn't even appear as an option where you would accidentally add this over to the project. So then if I click Next, I have some options here. I can add various estimates on my project. And lastly, I can set some project information like the project type, the project name, estimated start and end date, as well as apply a project team, like a team of people who will be working on this project already during this conversion. Okay. One thing here I really want to point out is that you don't want to use a project template if you have bundle class products in your sales order. And that's because we'll see just now, if we click Finish, that once we convert those bundle class products from the sales order to the project, we will see that they actually become the project phase in work plan. So in the project work plan. So now it's that bundle class product is a project phase, and those individual components of that bundle class product are now project tickets. So utilize your product catalog in PSA to actually build out the project phase so simply like that with a bundle class product. And another thing I want to point out in this project is that in the project products tab, we can see the non-inventory and inventory class products as well as the bundle class product. But notice here that in the invoice number and bill status fields, we can see that we've already actually invoice this customer for these hardware products. And we can also see in the bill status that they're billed for. So when we eventually create an invoice from this project, we won't accidentally bill the customer for things we've already billed for, the hardware in this example. So that's really important to notice that all of that information about the product is linked in a consistent way throughout the product's life cycle in PSA. Another thing I want to point out in the products tab is that you can use the actions drop down to convert the hardware to configurations. And this is huge because let's say your customer has an issue with some of the hardware you have procured from a vendor. If you convert it to a configuration, you will have the opportunity to store key information like the serial number, the manufacturer number, so that you can easily initiate a manufacturer warranty request from that hardware you sold from the customer. So just think about how using the configurations, carrying those products through, can keep all the information linked and in one place in PSA. So lastly, I'm going to show you how to convert a sales order to an agreement. Because if you go back to that sales order and click the convert button again, you can now choose the agreement option. Because once that project is finished, let's say we've already installed the equipment with our customer, it's now time to create that agreement because we want to start the agreement billing after we've actually installed that security equipment. So if I go ahead and click next, I can see now the products to copy to that agreement are only our agreement class product. Remember, these will become additions on the agreement so we can easily bill our customer. So now think about the product lifecycle. We've gone from the opportunity sales order now to the subsequent items so that we can easily invoice those customers in that next step. And think about how we've used that sales order to easily transition us internally in that sales handoff process. So, and the last thing with the agreement, you can set the start date and end date when you're using that conversion feature and those conversion options from the sales order. So I'll go ahead and finish that. And that just finishes our sales handoff process. And then we can go on to customer onboarding.
That was awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. We had a lot of great questions in there as well. I tried to get to all of them as quickly as possible, but if I have missed any, don't worry, we will have some time again at the end to go over these. And I want to just take us home here on the onboarding customers section of this. So I have one more business case for you lovely people. Let's help Wes out here. As his business grows, Wes and his team decide they need to prioritize their new customer onboarding process. In case his customers have any questions for service requests that need to be filled, any orders that they want to request for, maybe modify and add to, properly set onboarding process ensures that his customers also understand how to request assistance from the correct team at his company. Looking at our chevron here, we are in the final stages, people. Bear with me here as we go through this. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about were tracks. What are tracks? Are they used? I believe they should be used at every turn that they can be, as they're going to kind of keep accountability here for your company. They're going to make things easier. It's essentially just a checklist that you can kind of make sure that your team is monitoring and kind of going through the process correctly. Yeah, but after a lead has been nurtured by your marketing team, it's kind of up to your sales team to engage and evaluate the potential client, right? So as we discussed prior to this, that potential sale can be tracked using the opportunities in the Opportunity Tracks tab. When creating a track, you can add an action to send an email and then select a member to send the email to in the send to dropdown. You see what I have here actually is that exact thing, right? So we have a new client welcome track. So it's going to send a few emails out. It's going to create some activities for us to reach out to our client, start building a rapport, start understanding, or start letting them understand, how we work, how we interact with our customers, what they can do when they need requests for service or sales or anything like that. So we add a track to a workflow rule that utilizes tracks by just attaching them to the company whose status was just updated. And that's kind of what I wanted to go through here. So you'll see we have our company. It has a tracks tab. There's nothing in it. We want to go ahead and format and customize an email template to be sent out to them, right? So we can go here. We can manually add a track, where you'll see my new client welcome track right there. We have a couple of new ones there to select from. And just do this by selecting the plus icon here. What I want to show you here is going over this workflow rules, just another one that we have, kind of goes over automating part of the process for us and making sure that those little things, those little housekeeping things, the new welcome email that makes them feel all warm and fuzzy, want to make sure those things are picked up on. Want to make sure those are actually carried out on as well, because, aside from providing a very valuable service or product, these little things are what really help us retain customers, right? So here you can kind of see my workflow. It was a very basic one. I have it built just to look for a few things. We're looking for the company status. We're looking at it from to be active, right? So maybe this is you have company statuses you can utilize. You might have one labeled prospect, so that way they're not getting hit by all of these notifications, these workflow rules that only run on existing customers. Well, when you finally land a new customer and that deal is sealed, you switch them over to being an active part of your company in PSA. Maybe you switch their company type, and these can all be created in the setup tables, the company status setup table, the company type setup table, and these can really be created at your discretion, right? Maybe you don't need a new client type. You just have it as client. So when that gets created, the workflow rule looks for that company type. What I'm also going to look for in the caveat here is that we're going to have the company status has only been updated in the past day. So this is how we're really catching it in real time, right? We win our new client over, we sign them, we change them to being an active new client in our PSA instance. And now this workflow rule is going to pick up on that change, and it's going to go ahead and add a track to that company. Once we add the track to the company, we have a list in the tracks tab of everything that we need to do when it needs to be scheduled by. You can see some of these have different dates. One of them's, we want to create an activity for the account manager for their 30-day welcome call. We want that to be in January 2024. That's just automating part of the process, so we don't have to. Now we can move on to winning other sales. And here, once the workflow is fired, we go to that company tracks tab. We drill into a track here. This is maybe the new client email. This is just an example that we have. But, be sure to create a login to the PSA end user portal. If there's anything else that we need to help you out with, please don't hesitate to reach out. Those kind of nice things that really help, kind of the ties that bind us, right? And that brings us to an end. I know we got a lot of good questions here. I saw a lot of C's in this. I really, really, really appreciate that. I know Jennifer does as well. So we are going to get to that Q&A in just a moment here. I just wanted to go over a couple of key takeaways. Number one, we're using quotes to simplify the quoting process. It may seem like we're adding a step if you don't use the quoting process to the full extent like we detailed out, but it's really saving a lot of time on the back end of that process, right? We're adding information to our opportunity. We're passing it to CPQ, and then we're passing it back to PSA to really get into the fun stuff. We're converting opportunities to what? To sales orders. That's right. We're converting opportunities to sales orders so that way this can generate a lot of that momentum, a lot of that demand in PSA, and really start seeing, not only revenue, but seeing like service going out to our customers, making sure that we're actually providing them what they need. We're using sales orders to track the internal handoff processes. And finally, we're creating a standard customer onboarding experience, right? Chances are if you're here, you already have one in place in some capacity. Great time to go back, sit down, and make sure that you're really utilizing it to its fullest extent. I just wanted to point out, we do have some sales order documentation, some end user portal documentation, some procurement partner kit, onboarding kit. We have all of this information on the ConnectWise University here.
Yes, but we know you can click those links, so we have them actually in the virtual community. So if you're in the university homepage, look at that beautiful new LMS, that new learning management system we have. Click the community drop-down icon and select the ConnectWise virtual community. I've created a post here for this webinar, so if we don't answer any of your questions, we try to answer all of them. But if you have any questions that come up afterwards, go ahead and go into that virtual community post. Klein and I will leave this slide a QR code to navigate to that virtual community post. We'd love to hear from you about the webinar or any questions you have. Okay, so as we wrap this up, let's go ahead and answer any remaining questions. I'm looking at some questions in the chat here, and I see one says, can we invoice from a one opportunity? So in CPQ, you actually can collect a down payment from your customer in Order Porter. So we didn't have time to share that here. We had so much information to cover, but I can certainly share a link to that in the virtual community. So again, if you forgot, go ahead and use this QR code, go to that virtual community post. I'll go ahead and add some more information about how you can set up a payment processing option in Order Porter so that when your customer is signing, they can actually put in their for example, credit card information, you can collect a payment from CPU in order quarter. Okay. And I see some questions here. Why field entered? So we have some fields entered on both product and configurations that do not carry over. So I would have to look carefully at this to see what you're experiencing when you are converting a product to a configuration. Maybe it looks like there are certain fields that you anticipate carrying over that aren't. As far as I know, they should, but I would definitely have to work with you one-to-one. And I do want to mention as well, you can always contact Klein and I on the education team at ConnectWise by emailing education@connectwise.com. Sometimes some questions, it's difficult to answer without actually seeing what's happening on your end, or we need a little bit more time to work with you one-on-one to see what's going on. But as with all things, we're here to help you. We want to see you succeed. So go ahead and either use this QR code, chat with us in the virtual community, or if it's something that might require some screenshots about what's going on in your instance, you want to have that private conversation, just email us at education@connectwise.com. We will answer all of those questions and get some of that information for you. But as far as this product fields not carrying over to the configuration that's created, I have to see what's going on exactly on that instance because they, in general, should carry over. Okay, so what about recurring items like licensing that need to be purchased? That's a great question. So with recurring, so it sounds like this is something that is actually an agreement class product that you're going to convert over from the sales order to an agreement. It'll be an addition on agreement, but actually it also needs to generate purchasing demand. So there is an option when you're in an agreement to actually generate purchasing demand from that addition. So I can definitely share some documentation for that while I'm going ahead and finishing up some of these questions as well. I will see if I can pull up that documentation and respond directly to that in the chat. Okay, what is the sale? Oh, what if the sale is for one non-SKU for multiple locations? Okay, that is a very interesting business case. Colleen, I would think that you would use multiple products and set them to different locations, but what are you thinking about that? Because there, for example, one product might have multiple serial numbers. I'm imagining if it is in multiple locations, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking like multiple products for various locations. Although that's something that I haven't run into as much. I remember in my support days we would run into this, and that was typically the fix that we would have. Is we'd have them create multiple products for multiple locations, and it really depends on your individual business structure as well. Something that if you have a specific example of, definitely reach out to us, and once we have like a little bit better understanding of what it is that you're doing, we can kind of play with that and get you guys a better setup for that.
Absolutely. And once again, we really appreciate all of the participation in the chat. It has been wonderful answering all your questions about.
Definitely correct. I'm seeing a lot of questions about, can we have this webinar emailed to us? Will this be made available afterwards? This will definitely be made available on the university afterwards, as well as with all that information. You can definitely take a look at this. And I know we have some questions about maybe wanting to go over the bundling products portion at their own pace. So you can definitely go ahead and do that. This should start to be uploaded right after we finish here.
All right. So can you get consulting that knows both PSA and CPQ instead of both virtual admins for an onboarding or double check? Okay, that is a great question. I would definitely have to reach out to the consulting team for sure. You're talking about a one-to-one session. We definitely have consulting sessions available. They might have to create a specific case where you have both PSA and CPQ experts in the same session at the same time. I'm pretty certain they can set that up for you. Of course, although us software training consultants can't answer questions in general, but if you need someone to give you that one-to-one experience and really dive into what your business is like, all those business cases you have, I definitely recommend reaching out to consulting at ConnectWise, who can set that up for you, but I'm pretty certain they can.
Yes.
Okay, and let's wrap this up. Can you continue to invoice from the sales order after you've converted to the project? Yes, you can. Okay, and then let's answer this last question here. I know we're going a little over time, but I know had some issues with technical issues, so I'll try and help you. How do techs get updated about the status of a quote and purchasing? So it sounds like your service technicians want to know if some of that hardware was already delivered to the customer. So we looked at those sales order statuses. I would recommend adding those people to receive those notifications when a sales order is in a certain status. Let's say the sales order items have been shipped, but the sales order isn't yet closed where the ticket or project has been created. That's when I would recommend adding those techs so that they receive that information.
And you can add, I believe the token would just be assigned resources. So that way it's only the specific people assigned to those items in PSA will actually get those updates just to keep everything nice and tidy.
Exactly. Okay, will you be holding a ConnectWise bootcamp anytime soon? So this doesn't cover specifically the sales handoff like we've discussed, but we do have our Automation Nation coming up. So if you're in the Tampa area, Automation Nation will be very exciting. Klein will be there. So you can learn about hyper automation using business management solutions, as well as our RMM, remote monitoring management solutions like RMM and Automate. So that's definitely coming up. I suggest checking out Automation Nation, which
definitely. If you see me there, just grab me and say hello and tell me about this webinar that you sat and listened to me to through our tech issue. I would love that. No, really, I do appreciate you all staying here, and I am very excited to meet all of you or some of you in person.
Okay, and I'll think through this one last question. Can I have this webinar emailed to me? As always, these webinars will be published in the video library, but you will get a prompt in the email after this webinar. It'll give you a link to rewatch this recording as well as give us feedback. Please share your feedback with us. We'd love to hear from you about if this webinar was useful. Should we do more about the sales handoff or any other things you want to hear about from us? We love hearing from you. Okay, with that, I don't see any more questions coming in from the chat. Klein, do you want to take us out?
Absolutely. Friends, it's been great. I've grown. I hope you've all grown. I know Jennifer's grown. I know we had a little bit of tech issues in the beginning there, but we are incredible. I see a applaud emoji. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. All those units really go straight to the heart. Thank you. Please don't forget to reach out to us at education@connectwise.com if you do have any other additional questions about this. And I would greatly appreciate it if you guys could just put anything on the survey. Anything. Clive's glasses looked funny. Jennifer's hair is great. Clive looks like his mom dread. Anything like that, I would love to hear about it. And we would love to hear your feedback on the content we provided as well. That's obviously important. Thank you all. Truly appreciate it.